I still remember the night he told me I wasn't good enough. We were at a dinner party, surrounded by people I barely knew. Daniel's colleagues, investors, the type of polished crowd that spoke in numbers and deals while sipping expensive wine. I sat at the end of the long glass table, smiling politely, nodding when someone asked me about the children. And then it happened. One of the women asked if I worked, if I had a career of my own. I opened my mouth to answer, but Daniel laughed before I could get a word out. "She doesn't work," he said, his voice casual but sharp enough to cut through me. "Claire's just a mom. She never finished college, so—" He shrugged, as if that explained everything. The table chuckled politely, and the conversation shifted to something else. But I sat there frozen, my cheeks burning, my heart pounding. Just a mom. In that moment, I felt invisible. Like all the years I spent raising Ethan and Lily, holding the household together, supporting his dreams, meant nothing. That was the night something inside me broke. But it was also the night something new began. It wasn't always like this. When Daniel and I first met, he was charming, ambitious, and endlessly confident. I was 23, working part-time at a coffee shop, trying to figure out my life after leaving college. He walked in one morning, ordered a cappuccino, and struck up a conversation that felt like something out of a movie. He talked about his dreams, his plans, the future he wanted to build. And when he looked at me, it felt like he saw something no one else did. We dated, we fell in love, and within 2 years, we were married. At our wedding, under strings of white lights, he held my hands and promised, "We'll build this life together. I'll take care of you. You'll never have to worry." And I believed him. I believed so much that when he suggested I put school on hold to focus on our growing family, I agreed. "Just until things settle," he said. "Once I'm established, you can do whatever you want." So I poured myself into our home, into our children, into being the supportive wife. I clipped coupons, cooked meals, stayed up all night with sick babies while he chased his dreams. Every sacrifice I made, I told myself, was for us, for the family we were building. But somewhere along the way, us became him. Daniel's business started to take off in our 6th year of marriage. He worked long hours, but he came home glowing with excitement, talking about investors and opportunities. I listened, nodded, cheered him on. But with success came distance. The man who once brought me flowers just because now came home late, smelling of whiskey and cologne I didn't recognize. He started correcting me in public, making little jokes at my expense. "Don't mind Claire," he'd say, smirking to his friends. "She doesn't really understand this stuff." I laughed along at first, trying not to take it personally, but the jokes grew sharper, and the laughter stung. I told myself it was stress, that he didn't mean it, but the truth was undeniable. The more successful he became, the smaller he tried to make me. That dinner party was the breaking point. When he called me just a mom in front of all those strangers, something inside me shifted. I smiled politely that night, but inside I was screaming. On the drive home, I stared out the window, silent. Daniel noticed, but didn't care enough to ask. Instead, he bragged about the investors he impressed, the deals he closed. I listened, but all I could think was, what about me? What about the woman who gave up everything so you could have this life? By the time we pulled into the driveway, I made myself a quiet promise. If he wouldn't see my worth, I would make sure the world did, even if it meant doing it without him. I started small. Late at night, after the kids were asleep and Daniel passed out in front of the TV, I sat at the old family computer in the corner of our living room. At first, I just browsed, articles about online learning, free courses, forums where women like me shared their struggles. Then I signed up for a free typing course. My fingers fumbled across the keys, but I practiced night after night until the clumsy taps became smooth rhythms. From typing, I moved to spreadsheets, then graphic design, then digital marketing. Every new skill was like reclaiming a piece of the woman I had lost. Of course, I couldn't tell Daniel. When he caught me on the computer once, he laughed. "What are you doing?" "Playing secretary?" I smiled tightly and closed the laptop. Just browsing. But inside, I whispered to myself, "Someday, you'll see." One afternoon, I saw a post in a local moms group. A woman named Michelle needed help managing her small bakery's Instagram page. My heart raced as I typed a reply. I told her I'd been learning social media management and would love to help. I didn't mention that I had never been paid for it before. She agreed to let me try for 1 month. I poured myself into it, creating posts, learning about hashtags, engaging with customers. At the end of the month, her online orders doubled. When she handed me a check for $200, my hands shook. It wasn't about the money, it was about what it represented. Proof that I wasn't just a mom. Proof that I could do something on my own. I hid that check in a shoebox in my closet, along with a journal where I wrote every small victory. It became my secret treasury of hope. Every time Daniel belittled me, every time he rolled his eyes or laughed at my little projects, I added another note, another receipt, another memory to the shoebox. It became my silent rebellion, my private collection of evidence that I was more than what he allowed me to be. And as the shoebox filled, so did my confidence. For the first time in years, I felt alive. I was no longer waiting for Daniel to keep his promises. I was making promises to myself. And this time, I wasn't going to break them. I started working more seriously, taking on small freelance jobs online. At first, it was terrifying. I wasn't sure I was good enough. I second-guessed every email I sent, every post I scheduled. Some nights, I stayed up until 2 a.m., rewriting something over and over until it was perfect. But slowly, the rewards began to appear. A client praised my work, then another. I watched my account balance grow. Not a lot, but enough to remind me that I was capable. The best part was the independence. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of control over my life. Daniel barely noticed. Or maybe he did, but he didn't care enough to investigate. He was busy with his own world, his meetings, his drinks, his important calls. But the moment came when I realized he wasn't in control anymore. It was a quiet Friday evening. I had just completed a project for a real estate client, scheduling posts and writing copy for their social media pages. I logged into my account to check the stats. Engagement was up 50% from the previous month. I felt a rush of pride and power, a sensation I hadn't experienced in years. And then Daniel walked in. He glanced at my screen, smirked, and said, "Still playing on the computer, huh?" I didn't flinch. I didn't explain. I simply closed the browser and said, "I'm working." His smirk faltered, his eyes narrowing slightly. The realization hit me like a jolt. He had no idea what I was capable of. Of course, this wasn't easy. Balancing the children, household responsibilities, and secret work was exhausting. There were nights I cried quietly after tucking Ethan and Lily in bed, rubbing my temples and thinking, how am I going to do all of this tomorrow? But then I'd think about the future, their future, my future, and I'd push on. I found small ways to involve the children, too. Ethan helped me keep track of tasks. Lily handed me notes and reminders. They didn't fully understand what I was doing, but they noticed my energy, my pride, my newfound confidence. And slowly I realized I was teaching them more than any school could. I was showing them resilience, resourcefulness, self-worth. Daniel's world was starting to crumble too, though he didn't realize it. I noticed the subtle changes first. His calls to work started getting defensive. His emails were terse. He snapped at employees for minor mistakes. Then came the late-night fights. At first, they were concerned discussions about money, but soon the concern turned into blame. "You're distracted," he accused one night as I typed at the kitchen table. "I can feel it." "You're hiding something," I smiled inwardly. He had no idea. I wasn't hiding. I was preparing. It happened when I landed my first paying client under my own small business name. I had incorporated BrightPath Solutions in secret, opening a business account, designing a simple website, and creating professional email addresses. When the first payment arrived in my account, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the numbers, trembling. It wasn't just money. It was proof that I could survive, thrive, and build something independent of him. I tucked the receipt into my shoebox of secrets, a small smile curling on my lips. For the first time, I felt unstoppable. By now, I had stopped counting the small victories. BrightPath Solutions had grown beyond anything I could have imagined in those first secret nights at the old family computer. I had a team, multiple clients, and a system that ran smoothly, even if I slept late or had to tend to the kids. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. Meanwhile, Daniel's empire started collapsing fast. I heard whispers through mutual acquaintances first. "He's in trouble," someone said. "Investors are pulling out." "He's behind on payroll." Then came the phone calls I couldn't ignore. Clients calling for advice about BrightPath, mistaking me for a consultant, or asking if I could help them navigate the chaos Daniel left behind. One evening, he stumbled home past midnight, smelling of alcohol, with his tie undone and his briefcase barely hanging from his arm. I need you to help me," he slurred. "I can't fix this alone." I stared at him. This was the man who once told me I was helpless, who laughed when I tried to learn anything, who told me I'd never make it without him. And now he needed me. I didn't yell. I didn't rage. I simply stood there, taking note of every detail. The cracked lines in his confident facade, the desperation in his voice, the fatigue behind his eyes. I let him stew in it, because I knew something he didn't. True power doesn't come from rage. It comes from control, patience, and timing. And the timing was perfect. By this point, BrightPath Solutions was no longer just my lifeline. It was my legacy. We handled clients in multiple states. I had a team of 6, all women who had stories like mine. Some had been stay-at-home moms. Others had been trapped in abusive marriages. All of them were learning that independence wasn't just a dream. It was a choice. One night, as I signed off from a long client call, I looked at my account balance and smiled. This was my life. Mine, not Daniel's. And I was never going back. It happened quietly, almost unexpectedly. Daniel came home with his shoulders slumped, a duffel bag in hand. He had lost the house in Chicago, the cars, his office, everything. "Claire," he said softly, his voice shaking, "I have nowhere else to go." I made mistakes. Please, I need you for a moment. I thought of pity. The old me might have opened the door, forgiven, tried to salvage him. But I had changed. I had grown. I looked at him calmly, deliberately. "Daniel, you made your choices. You broke promises, humiliated me, and took me for granted. I didn't need you then, and I don't need you now." He sank to the couch, defeated. "Please, I need something, someone." I shook my head, quiet but firm. "You need yourself, but I'm done giving you what I've earned for myself." And just like that, the final thread tying me to him snapped. Revenge isn't always dramatic. Sometimes the quiet moments are the sweetest. Watching him sit there, finally realizing that the woman he underestimated had built a life stronger than his, was more satisfying than any confrontation could have been. I didn't gloat. I didn't throw insults. I simply returned to my life, my children, my business, the life I had fought so hard to create. That was my revenge, living well, thriving without him, and proving that I was never defined by the limitations he tried to impose. The next morning, I took Ethan and Lily to school. The air was crisp, the sun warm. They laughed and played, their backpacks bouncing as they ran. Lily looked up at me and asked, "Mom, are we going to be okay?" I knelt down, holding her small hands. "We're not just going to be okay," I said, smiling. "We're going to be amazing." Ethan nodded, determination shining in his young eyes. And I realized then that my life was no longer defined by Daniel or anyone else. It was defined by me, my choices, and the strength I had earned through years of struggle. I had survived, I had grown, I had thrived, and that, more than anything else, was my victory. People often ask if I regret staying as long as I did, enduring the humiliation, the belittlement, the broken promises. The answer is no. Every hardship, every tear, every moment of fear prepared me for the woman I became. I learned that strength isn't given, it's earned. Resilience isn't optional, it's necessary. And revenge doesn't always come from destruction. Sometimes it comes from rising, quietly, proudly, and unshakably. Daniel thought he could break me. He didn't realize he was shaping me. And when he finally understood that he had lost not because of me, but because of his own choices, it was too late. Because I had already won. Every night, when I tuck Ethan and Lily into bed, I whisper a silent thank you to the hardships, the setbacks, and even to Daniel himself. Because without them, I would never have found the courage to stand alone, to build my empire, my family, my life, to become the woman who knew her own worth, and to teach my children that no one has the power to define them but themselves. That is my revenge. That is my freedom. That is my life.